What's going on YouTube? Today we're putting in a knock sensor on the S2000 and wired it into max ECU. So this is a Bosch 2-wire knock sensor. This is going to be our adapter to put into our block, and here's our pigtail to wire into the max ECU. Now up until this point I haven't ran a knock sensor, and I haven't ran a knock sensor in my car for a very long time. Reason being is that I run high octane fuel. I look at my plugs pretty often to see, how the engine is doing, knock issues and stuff like that. And since I run high octane fuels, I'm not pushing a pump gas fuel. I don't really worry about knock that much. But we did get a knock sensor back when I got the max ECU. I just never put it in. And since we have some downtime and the block is apart, I can easily get to the side of the block. I figured, well, why not throw the knock sensor in? I can run a knock sensor and I can turn all knock stuff off so my car doesn't even pay attention to it. But I figured it'd be a good data to have, just seeing how the motor sounds at wide throttle. And then if we ever do put it on a lower octane fuel, we can at least possibly have the option to have knock sensing and be able to see if we are knocking. So we'll get to it. So essentially that is your factory knock sensor location. And all we're gonna end up doing is putting this adapter in. So this goes in to the block, and then your sensor will mount right here. So we'll go ahead and throw this on and see how she fits. All right, so there you see we have our stud hanging out. All you do then is slide your knock sensor on and put a nut on. And this is a lock nut. We'll go ahead and lock that down. And then all we're gonna have to do then is, so this is the factory knock sensor plug, and that's just a single wire. Double wires are much better at, and that's why we go with the Bosch, is because a 2-wire knock sensor is a lot nicer than a single wire. Single wires are very sensitive. You get a lot of feedback. With a double wire, you don't get as much feedback, and they're a lot more easier to tune. So we'll go ahead and tighten this nut up. We'll probably face this down like that, or it might go sideways, I don't know yet, we'll see. And then we just gotta wire up. We just gotta bring the wires through the firewall, up and over, so we can wire our pigtail up. All right, gonna be probably hard to see, but do you see the blue insulation right there? So that little wire, I basically had to cut out of the blue to get that brown wire out, because that is our ground. And these are all insulated wires. So I'm gonna have to run a ground wire from my knock sensor to that ground wire. And then all we did was we took our factory ground, or factory signal wire from our factory harness, which is already adapted and plugged into the max ECU. So all we gotta do now is hook up our second, which is our ground knock, and that'll complete our Bosch knock sensor install. All right, she's all in, she's wired up, she's through the firewall. So now all we gotta do is see how it sounds in the ECU. But that's gonna have to wait till we get the head and the turbo back. Well, we got our head back from Jeremy. As you can see, we got 3 new exhaust valves. The rest were fine. And then he went ahead and cut down the guides, so they're much shorter now. You guys can see, hopefully, that's just crap. I was blowing it off with the air. But there you can see the new guide, the new valve. And you can see, or that was a cracked guide there. It's not really focusing. There you can see how short they are now. So much shorter. Hopefully won't have any more problems with that. All right, we got our intake manifold on. Always use a torque wrench on your intake manifold bolts. And the reason I do that, torque is important, especially on gasket surfaces, okay? I do not torque spec the exhaust manifold. I have that in my elbow, but I do the intake manifold. I run the thermal plastic gasket. These are torqued to 190 inch-pounds, and you need to get a nice even clamp force. One, your bolts and your nuts will stay tight. They will stay tight if they're all even across the board. But if you get this one tight and this one's a hair loose, eventually this one will loosen up over time because it's just not an even clamp force. So very important to use a torque wrench, especially on your intake manifold bolts. I have never lost an intake manifold nut or bolt ever. And I think because I always use a torque wrench. But as you guys know, I normally put my head on and off with the intake manifold on because of that guy. Extremely hard to get to when it's in the car. Yeah, it is this dude right here. It's very hard to get to in the car. It's all the way back to firewall. This guy's blocking it, so it's very difficult to get back there. It is doable. I took off the intake manifold before I took the head off, but when I put stuff back on, I normally just go ahead and put the intake manifold on because you can't really get to some of these with a torque wrench when they're in the car. So I do it out of the car. So next up, clean everything up. Make sure you blow out metal filings and stuff. As you can see, there's metal filings that I blew out from the machine process. You get all that stuff out, make sure it's clean, go back to the car. All right, so as you guys know, I am a big fan of the Honda OEM MLS head gasket. That is what I run, and Jermey Allen has the integrated O-rings, the steel ring on the sleeves, and we've had zero issues with head gaskets. The only problem is they're $140 for a head gasket, so every time I pull this head off, I gotta jump another $140 on a dang head gasket. So, we're gonna try a different brand. We're gonna try this male head gasket. It looks very similar to the OEM. I know what you guys are thinking. Oh my God, he's gonna blow head gaskets with that. And it very well possibly I could lift this or blow this head gasket, but I wanna see if it holds up. We have extremely strong, tough studs. We have the integrated O-ring, and like I said, I don't have issues with the stock one, other than they're very expensive, which I don't have any problem spending the money on good stuff. As you guys know, I spend good money on good parts, but if I can run a $40 head gasket and it does the same thing, I'm gonna run a $40 head gasket. So this is kind of trial and error. Don't know if it's gonna work, but we're gonna go ahead and try this male head gasket. It's $40 head gasket. It's way cheaper than the factory one. It's the same thickness. It's 3-layer. It has upper, lower, and a center, just like the factory, and it looks very similar. So we're gonna give it a shot, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, I'll take the head off and put an OEM back on, and no harm, no foul. But we're gonna give this male head gasket a try. So we're gonna go ahead and get our Honda bond on our timing cover area, throw this male head gasket on, get this head on, get the studs torqued down. And I don't know how far I'll get today. It is raining out, so it's not like I can really do a whole lot, but we'll see how far we get today. I got some injectors over there getting cleaned. I need to use some injectors for some customers. So we'll see what we get done, but we'll see if we can get this bad boy back together here shortly. Well, I'm beat. We got a lot of it put back together, but I'm beat. I'm all done. I had some customers show up with some injectors I needed to do, and then I had another set that I had to get out before Monday, so just been busy. But before we go in for the night, I figured I would show you guys what came in the mail. So I got my turbo back. So I ended up sending my turbo out to Boost Lab instead of Precision. Kirk and Ryan at Boost Lab have a really nice turbo shop, and I just really appreciate their customer service, how much they spend talking to me about problems that they saw. So now we got a fresh turbo inside, not all chewed up. They took it all apart. They looked at it for me. I was getting some oil push through the ring, and they ended up telling me, they said that my drain was fine and my size and everything, but with the Honda motors, they see this a lot, especially with Precision. The oil pressure is just too much and it pushes oil past the rings. So now I'm going to be running this little guy, and that little guy down there is a Turbo Smart oil pressure regulator, and it just runs in line with your feed. And they said that that should completely solve my ring problem. It actually limits it down to 40 PSI, same flow, so it has plenty of oil flow, but cuts down on this 90, 100 PSI of oil pressure that Hondas do see on these turbos. And they said that's what pushes the ring pass. So we threw that on. Hopefully that'll take care of pushing the fluid or the oil past the ring. And we got a fresh turbine, so the turbo is ready to go. So big shout out to Boost Lab. You guys are awesome. Good pricing. I had it done in a week and back to me, and was able to talk to me and figure out why it did what it did when it comes to pushing, instead of just trying to do band-aids and stuff. So really great, guys. If you guys need turbos or service done, check out Ryan and Kirk at Boost Lab. What's up? It's the next morning, as you can tell, bedhead. We're gonna finish up getting this all back together. It is a crappy day out. It's raining really bad. So we're really not gonna be able to go out and break the rings in, which really sucks. I wanted to do that today, but at least we'll get it together. We'll get it running. We'll get the coolant bled and everything. And we'll see how these injectors idle. Another thing you gotta do, new sensor from Low Dollar Motorsports. This is a 200 PSI sensor. This is going into my fuel because I was pegging the fuel pressure. That is why it went really rich on the last race. I hit scramble in the big end against a Tesla, and fuel pressure went above 150, and the ECU knew that it needed more pressure because it follows the fuel pressure line. And since it wasn't where it should have been, the ECU automatically starts dumping fuel to protect your motor. And that's why it went extremely rich, because it pegged out 150 and it was really probably in the 160s, and it just pegged out. So we got a 0 to 200 PSI sensor, so that does not happen anymore. All right, we are all buttoned back up. Putting water in her, give her her first crank. All right, we got our fuel pressure sensor finally figured out, I believe. So we're gonna go ahead and crank her up. She is running. Everything looks good, no leaks. My oil pressure regulator, nothing's leaking there, and the oil is getting good flow to the turbo. I checked that. Now we just got to bleed the coolant. I actually put so I used to run a thermostat that I drilled big old bleeder holes in it, and the car kind of struggled getting warm. So I put just a normal one in with no bleeder holes. So it's gonna be a little bit rougher to bleed the system, but I'll get it done. But the reason for that was just so the car could warm up pretty quickly and not sit around at 120, 130 all day trying to get the thing warm. Big radiator, very efficient, and it just struggled getting warm. So I had to take the bleeders away. But like I said, it's not great outside. It's completely wet roads. I'm not gonna be able to break the rings in, and I don't really want to idle anymore today. You really shouldn't idle new rings. They need to go out and get some pressure on them. So the more you idle them, the more chance you could glaze the walls over and stuff. But everything's looking pretty good. I'm gonna try to bleed the coolant as much as I can, and then probably won't be able to get out until after work sometime during the week to break it in. Well, guys, she's back. Did a little ring break-in and came back, and I got it's about 15 to 12 on one, and then less than 10% leak on the rest, and it's only had a couple pulls. So after the race weekend, I'm sure it'll seal up even more. But the big thing is going to be checking the bores after each event. I'm going to bore scope and see if I'm getting any of that familiar wear that I did before. But fingers crossed, and I'm hoping that the fuel injector placement in the intake manifold is what was causing it, and getting those down on top of the valve, not disrupting the fuel flow. Hopefully that will take care of our problem, but we will soon see after a couple events. But that's going to do it. Appreciate it. Comment, like, subscribe, like what you're watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video. See you.